Hi, Sandra here from Create in Spain, and today I wanted to show you a few things that I use, watercolour things. Now, a lot of people are scared of painting. They're just nervous about it. And from my experience of art lessons in school, to be honest, I'm not surprised. Our art teacher was enough to scare most people. However, there are simple ways of getting into watercolour that needn't be as scary. I'm talking particularly about parents or aunts, uncles, grandparents, relatives of any description who've got youngsters around who say, I want to do some painting. I haven't got any paints, I want some paints. Now, if your lessons at school were anything like mine, you remember the appalling poster paints we used to have to use. Powder that was mixed up with water that was, absolutely horrendous in most cases. It was low quality. It was horrible to work with. The paper we were given was revoltingly bad. And to me, that doesn't inspire much artistic talent. Now, I'm not advocating that you spend an absolute fortune on children's art materials, far from it. The most expensive thing in their kit should probably be, if they're doing watercolour, the paper. The paper I have here that I've been doodling on is a 300 gram watercolour paper that I got in a pad. It was on offer at the time. It's quite cheap. It wasn't an expensive one at all. And this particular one has got quite a textured surface to it. It's fine. I'm not overly fussy about my paper, and it would certainly be adequate for people to practice on. The other thing that people tend to be concerned about with paint is the mess, the cleanup. Children paint, we've been there, we've done that. And yes, it can be messy, but it needn't be messy. And watercolours are at least easily transportable. They don't take up much room, and there are different things that you can use. First of all, I'm going to show you these, which are water-soluble wax pastels. They're made by Reeves, and the packet of 12 cost me just over €3, so we're not talking expensive here. When you open them up, you would think that they are normal wax crayons. It's what they feel like, it's what they look like. But normal wax crayons would be resistant to water, and they certainly wouldn't dissolve in it. These dissolve in water, and they have some interesting properties. You can use them on dry paper. If I can take one here, just do a scribble, and it looks like a crayon. But if, for example, I then spray some water on this, and even if I just mix it with my finger, you can see that transforms it to a paint. And so these are actually quite good. And in fact, I've done a demonstration on the back. I just used a stencil and I did a rainbow. This is the rainbow I did with these. And I literally just coloured within the lines of the stencil very roughly, and then applied water to the crayoning afterwards and removed the stencil, and it comes out as a paint effect. These can be used in several different ways. You can wet the surface of the paper and then you can use them on wet paper. You can actually put water, I've got a water bottle here. For example, I'm hoping you can see this. It's quite difficult doing camera on the side. But if you squeeze it around a bit in the water, you can see that it's changed colour. And that will actually mix up to a paint. So you could actually use it as a paint. Or you can just dip it in water and you can draw with it like so. And you can get some really clever effects with this. It's a good way of seeing if children are that interested in paint and paint effects to take it any further. and it's also highly transportable. And so, you know, if you've got children coming to visit, you can have a packet of these around, pad of paper and some water, and you're pretty much well away. Now, what I would like to show you next is something which is really, really great. I love these. These are made by Pentel. The Japanese do great brushes sometimes. And they have the wonderful idea of putting water into brushes. And if I take the tips off, you can see I have a very fine, a medium, and a thicker one. I hope you can see this. And you literally unscrew them, fill them with water, and you're ready to go. I mean, this is excellent. If you want to do painting on the move, this is brilliant. It's absolutely great. Now, in conjunction with these water-soluble waxes, wax crayons, they're supposed, well, they say they're wax, okay, debatable what they are, but in conjunction with these, you can obviously add the water with these. You can do gradiated washes, you can do all sorts of things with these pens. And the great thing is, cleanup is a complete and utter breeze. Even if, for example, I dip this into the actual paint. But all you have to do is just wipe it on a piece of paper, cloth, whatever, and your paintbrush is clean. It's a doddle to clean it. It's absolutely lovely. So that's one thing that you can do. You can use these with normal watercolours, you can use them with acrylics, I suppose, if you wanted to, as long as you were careful about keeping them clean. You could use them with the traditional watercolours that come in little square blocks, the dried ones. You could use them tube watercolours, it's fine, whatever you like. But they're really, really handy, and I do absolutely love these brushes. And I said there's next to no cleanup involved, which is even better. Regards cleanup, if you use a palette like this, and this is a China one, China is easier to clean up of stains than plastic. Plastic does tend to sometimes absorb some of the colour, but a palette with China little wells is easy enough. Generally what I do, if I have paint on my palette at the end of the day, I just spray it, take a little spray it with water, let it sit there for a minute, and then just get a piece of paper towel, wipe it out, everything's gone. It takes all of a minute and a half. If you want normal artist brushes, there are millions of different types, grades, and so on. You want nice soft brushes for watercolour, and as long as you have 2 or 3 different sizes, something like that, that will keep most children quite happy for a considerable length of time. And as you need more, you can get more, but you don't have to spend an arm and a leg first. Okay, as mentioned before, spray bottles. Cheap cosmetic spray bottle filled with water, very handy. Dropper bottles, quite handy if you're making up paint in a well, and again if you're travelling with your art kit, quite handy thing to have. I do have a little bottle of alcohol here, and no, it's not so I can have a drink on the move. This has got a fine point. It reacts with watercolour to make a nice paint effect, and that's why I have it. These I think are designed for henna. I don't use henna, but I do have uses for these. Okay, this here is really great. Yes, it's a pencil sharpener. I was aware that most people know about pencil sharpeners, but this one has 2 different holes, and it's not for different size pencils. One gives a blunt, rounded point, if you like. Seems strange to say that, but a more rounded point to the pencil, and the other one gives a sharp point to the pencil. And again, sometimes that's handy. Some pencils are fragile and you don't want to put a really sharp point on, and other times you do. On a similar vein, I have this, which I found in a local, sort of the equivalent of our dollar stores, and it's an eraser, but it is an eraser in a pencil format. And the stick comes blunt end, and I simply put that through the pencil sharpener to get the finish on it that I actually want. It was very, very cheap. It was under €1, and that came with about 5 refills. So yeah, really cheap. It is extremely soft, and it's very good if you just want to take out little sketch lines, because it doesn't damage the paper. Alright, what else have we got? This is what Americans call frisket, and what people in the UK call masking fluid. And again, it is in one of these bottles. I've decanted some into a bottle with a very, very fine point. And the reason for this is so that I can draw very fine lines with my frisket, or whatever you might like to call it. And I can't get the pin back in now, never mind. I need to take my glasses off to do that. And what you do is you use this to draw on your paper, and then you paint over it when it's dry. It's a rubber, and basically it peels off, so you are left with white patches wherever it's been applied. Okay, next I would like to show you these. These are Ink Intense pencils, and they are water-soluble pencil inks, really. They produce a very vibrant colour, similar in usage to the pastels there, but for example, I don't know if you can see the difference on the camera in colour. This is much more vibrant colour than that is. And obviously, being pencils, they are sharpened to a greater point. You can use them for more accurate, detailed drawings. One of the things I did, for example, is this little leaf here, and just drew the lines, then added some water, and again, you can dissolve the pencils in water. You just do exactly as I did with the pastels, and you just dip it in, you swirl it around until you get the intensity of colour that you want. And again, you can use them on dry paper, you can use them on wet paper to get various effects. But obviously they're easily transportable, and they don't cost an arm and a leg. I think this lot was about £12, and lots of different colours in here. And yeah, they look like normal pencils, but the colour dissolves. Right, two other things to show you. If you go the traditional route for watercolours, you can use the palettes. I don't like the solid squares of watercolour very much. I like to mix up 2 colours, and this is how I mix mine. This is an ice cube tray, and I put the paint in, and the other thing that I add to mine is something that belongs in the kitchen, honey. This is runny honey. I add a couple of drops to each well before adding the liquid, the tube paint. And then I add water and I mix it to the consistency of something like double cream. This palette of paints has been left alone quite deliberately for about a year, and all I have to do to revive these to make them usable is spray with water like that. That will be enough to make those paints usable. The honey keeps the paint moist, and having tried this palette with honey and without honey, it is much, much better with honey. What else can I say about watercolour? It's not for those that like control. Watercolour does what watercolour does. You don't control it. It has what I call happy accidents very frequently. Sometimes you get an effect you like, and sometimes you think, disaster. But of all the paints that you can buy, watercolour is most satisfying. It's translucent, transparent. It has a strength of colour, or it can have a strength of colour which is quite astounding, but it can also have great delicacy of colour too. It is very, very versatile. It is cheap to buy, and cleanup is a lot easier than it is, for example, with acrylics, and certainly a lot easier than oils. So if you or any of your loved ones are considering taking up painting, then yes, I can recommend watercolour. Just this bit alone here would probably have cost me no more than something like £30 in total. And you don't have to buy everything at once, and you don't have to buy everything at all. But if you just want to start, then I would suggest getting a couple of tube paints, just student grade, or go for the pencils and these, because you can quite easily make your own watercolours just from mixing these up, and you can get brilliant results. So don't be put off. It's a very exciting medium to use, and certainly I love it, and I hope you will do too. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.